closed captioning. We have closed captioning enabled. If you need it, there should be an option in your Zoom toolkit there to turn that on for yourself if you need it. We're going to go ahead and get started, but first I love to take a minute to learn a little bit about all of you who are joining us this evening. So we're going to get started with a poll. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're calling in from tonight, and give folks just another minute or two while you take the kind of 3-question poll. It's exciting to see where everybody's coming from. Thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us, we're just taking a minute to take a poll here to see where folks are logging in from, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the webinar. Got closed captioning tools enabled. If you need them turned on, you can do so on your end. And we're recording tonight so that we'll be able to share this information out after the fact as well. All right, we're going to give you about another 10 seconds or so on the questions. Excellent, some out-of-state folks. Welcome. Fire is relevant everywhere, so we appreciate you tuning in. All right. Thank you, everybody, for just sharing a little bit about yourself with us. We really appreciate it. Okay. Close that out. And let's go ahead and get started. Hello again. My name is Kendra Ramus. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Chief Program Officer here at Washington Trails Association. As I mentioned, this is our second member webinar. We're excited to do this series to really share with our members, our supporters, what we're working on here at WTA, and all of the work we're doing to ensure that there are trails for everyone forever. Over 56% of our funding comes from members like you. So everything you hear about is really made possible thanks to your generosity. So again, thank you so much, not just for joining us, but for really helping us do all of the good work that we're able to do, and that we'll share just a tiny piece of with tonight. A couple of housekeeping things. We're hoping to share some highlights and updates and really talk about the work that WTA has been doing to address growing fire season in the recent years. And then we'll leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. There's a Q&A function here in the webinar, so you can put your questions there, and we'll hopefully have some time at the end to answer those live. As I mentioned, we'll be doing a recording, and we'll follow up after the fact, so with a few more resources. So hopefully if we can't get to all the questions tonight, you can still get the information you were looking for. There's tons more great information on the website as well. It's exciting to see so many people on with us tonight, and as we were going through the polls, it looks like we've got some newer to WTA folks as well. So I want to take a minute to just share a little bit more about Washington Trails Association with the new folks. We could jump to the next slide, please. Excellent. So for those who are new to WTA, we're a nonprofit community of hikers that really comes together around a shared joy of time in nature and giving back to trails and the places we love. We started more than 50 years ago as a way for hikers to help hikers, and we've grown into the largest hiking nonprofit in the United States. WTA is really where outdoor enthusiasts come to get inspired, get involved, and make a difference. We believe that people are the key to creating a more sustainable trail system and a safe and welcoming recreation community. WTA mobilizes hikers and everyone who loves the outdoors to explore, steward, and champion our public lands and trails. We help folks explore the outdoors through our great website and our Trailblazer app, which have up-to-date information on thousands of trails across Washington. We help people steward by connecting them with volunteer trail work opportunities across the state. And we help people advocate and really be the voice of trails through our Trail Action Network, which is really key to changing policies and raising funds for our public lands. And folks do all of that because of our shared vision of really wanting to ensure that there are trails for everyone forever. So we're going to jump forward to the next slide here. Part of what helps make WTA so impactful is that we're sort of always looking at recreation, hiking, and public lands at that landscape level. And when we see a gap or an emerging issue surrounding recreation management or public lands, WTA really steps up and looks for how we can be part of the solution. That's how we first started at the very beginning with trip reports and wanting to share information among hikers. That's how we started our trail maintenance volunteer program when we really wanted to fill the gap of work that our land management partners couldn't do. It's how we started our outdoor leadership training program to ensure that community leaders had the gear and training that they needed to take youth outdoors, and so many others. So where we see a need, we really try and lend a hand to trails and hikers. And in recent years, over the past decade, we've noticed, as I'm sure you have as well, that the changing climate has had a major impact on everything, including the hiking season, trails, and public lands, bringing more extreme weather, a significant increase in the number of wildfires and their intensity. And that's what we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about today. Next slide, please. Excellent. So I'm sure it's no surprise to folks here today that there's a new season in Washington. There's fire season, which is becoming just a part of the vernacular of Washington hikers. So that WTA, again, really wants to make sure that everyone has the tools and information they need to stay safe while outdoors. And the impacts of fire really do last well beyond when the flames have been put out. Wildfires create public access challenges. Fires can really damage trails. The high intensity fires make soil unstable and can increase erosion. When fire burns through the tree canopy, those trees eventually fall, and that can clog the trail. And you'll see some great examples of pictures later in the presentation tonight, but this is something that goes on over the course of a decade. So it's just like pickup sticks sometimes. So WTA crews have really stepped up and now have extensive experience partnering with the Forest Service to address these conditions that are created by wildfires. And my colleague Zach is going to join us to talk a little bit more later tonight about the presentation. Talk a little bit more tonight in the presentation about the work we're doing on the ground to really restore trails. But I want to start with a little bit of background of how we got here. All right, we're hikers, we love a good map. So over the last 2 decades, the size and destruction of wildfires has really increased, and it's become much more difficult and costly to suppress fires as they've gotten larger. This map shows really examples of the sort of fires over the last 20 years. The zone in red are really from 2017 to 2022. So you can kind of see the red area there is what we've been really facing recently. There's some pretty big fires in there. And now, obviously, the impacts to our society are not just about hiking and recreation. The impacts from fire are so much larger than that, to people's homes, to people's lives, health, and communities. So I do just want to take a second to, we're really focusing on trails and public lands tonight. The impact from fire goes well beyond what we'll be talking about today. And the sort of impact of wildfires also goes well beyond Washington state. Washington is certainly not alone in the challenges we're facing, but it is where WTA is focused. So across Western Washington, though, we've been seeing wildfires in record size, record numbers. And one of the sort of reasons for the increase in fires is that throughout the 20th century, the federal government really emphasized fire suppression. So really stopping any fire from happening. And many of Washington and other states' ecosystems evolved with sort of a regular cycle of low intensity fires. So by not allowing any of that to happen, it led to an abundant fuel source on the forest ground and really started to create some pretty dangerous conditions because there wasn't sort of that natural fire cycle. Of course, the other piece of this equation is that Washington has been facing hotter and hotter conditions, and that's created more dry fuel and created more circumstances where fire is more likely. So we've got warmer summers and increased chance of wildfires due to lightning, human caused, and as the chief of the Forest Service reported to Congress, the conditions are expected to worsen as climate continues to change the temperature rate. And so the Forest Service has really started responding by creating fuel treatment programs such as prescribed burns. So this is really a return to how Indigenous people managed the land for time in memoriam, really using fires to manage for specific plants and the overall forest health. Fire has always been a tool to sort of promote ecological diversity and reduce the risk of catastrophic fires by, again, clearing out that debris and kind of keeping things in a more sort of natural state. So as we're starting this switch to more prescribed burns, Okanagan Wenatchee Forest is actually one of the top priority forests in the nation for reducing that fire risk. And so they've already started doing some prescribed burns this year there to really do that. So I'm going to take a breath here and give folks a minute to just join me in a quick poll again. I would just want to kind of get a sense from folks on the webinar here if you have been impacted by fire over the past couple of years or smoke as you've been making your hiking plans. Yeah. Just give another 5 seconds here to folks to finish it out. Great. So it's no surprise that fire really has been impacting so many of us across Washington state, and has had an impact then on our hiking choices, trails, and season overall. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how WTA is really working to address those challenges, really across the board. So WTA's advocacy team has really been working to support additional funding for wildfire prevention and suppression, and not just getting more money, but ensuring that it's a dedicated pot of funds so that we're not draining the limited resources from recreation and sort of land management funding. And in recent years, Congress has really stepped up with WTA and several other people advocating for pretty significant increases in the amount of funding to the Forest Service to address the risk of fire to communities. We've supported several bipartisan infrastructure bills that have provided more than $3 billion in additional funding for that sort of hazardous fuels treatment that we talked about a little bit, the prescribed burn, as well as other programs. And they're really continuing to look at the significant resources it takes to ensure that we're keeping our communities safe as this fire season continues to grow. This is true also at the state level. WTA supported the Department of Natural Resources' successful and historic wildfire funding request back in 2021 that dedicated $500 million over 8 years to support Department of Natural Resources wildfire programs. Again, this is really key to ensuring that our agency partners have the funding they need to kind of get ahead of these issues and then fight fires as well. In addition to our advocacy work, WTA works with land managers to prioritize general or annual maintenance and address those maintenance backlogs so that we can really ensure that we're reducing the factors that contribute to the spread. So keeping those trails clear and clean and keeping those challenging backcountry spaces as open as possible. And of course, in recent years, we again saw a need and stepped up and went ahead and we've expanded our efforts to restore trails that have actually been lost by fire, ensuring that these key backcountry hikes don't fall off the map. You can go ahead and switch the slide, please. So these efforts really to bring a trail back, so to speak, require additional planning and skill sets. So WTA has added professional crews to our summer trail work bag of tricks. And we're very fortunate tonight to have one of our Lost Trails Found crew members and now coordinator here with us to share more about the program. So I'm going to hand it off to Zach so he can tell you more about the great work that he's been a part of.
Thank you, Kendra. It's great to be here this evening. Yeah, thanks you all for joining in to talk about fires. I am Zach Sklar. I'm the Lost Trails Found coordinator here at WTA. And the Lost Trails Found program is our, as you can tell from this picture, very professional trail crew. As Kendra was alluding, it's just one more tool that we've developed in our toolkit. Having a professional trail crew allows us to get into a lot of burn scars that are pretty fresh, have recently burned, and have a lot of dangerous situations and need a lot of work to reopen to get them able to be hiked on by the public. So tonight, just kind of to share a little bit about the work that we do, I'm going to tell you the story of 3 fires that the Lost Trails Found crew has been involved in. So the first fire I want to talk about is the Schneider Springs fire. You can see the map of it here. It took place kind of just east of Mount Rainier in 2021. So it's a very recent fire. The Lost Trails Found crews last year were the first trail crews to go into the area since it burned. And we were tasked by the forest with opening the entire backcountry trail system within the William O. Douglas Wilderness. So everywhere that the Schneider Springs fire burned into the wilderness, all of that trail system was severely impacted by the fire, and the Lost Trails Found crews were tasked in going in there and reopening it. Now, when you go into such a fresh burn scar, it's a pretty eye-opening experience. It's not the kind of place that most people choose to go on a day hike, so not everyone gets to see it, but you can just stand on these ridge tops like this one and you look down and every single thing that you can see is just dead black trees. And when fires like this burn hot enough, they'll actually even burn the soil as well. So there's no organic material left in the dirt. It's just hillsides of dust. So as you can imagine, conditions like these make finding the trail a pretty difficult task. There's fallen dead trees that are covering everything. The trail surface has been eroded, and this is where the experience of a professional trail crew really shines. So as we're working in these burn scars, we're constantly scouting ahead to make sure we're right on the right path, all while cutting through corridors of just big piles of logs and assessing for overhead hazards and changing weather conditions the whole time. There's just a multitude of things that we're constantly keeping aware of to make sure that we're on the right track and staying safe. And it's hard work, but it is extremely rewarding. In our first year working in the Schneider Springs burn scar, we reopened 24 miles of backcountry trails, and we set ourselves up to get deeper into the backcountry, deeper into the wilderness area this summer, where we're going to go back and hopefully reopen another 24 miles of trail. But this work that's happening in the William O. Douglas is just the beginning of a much longer story. And to illustrate that, the next fire I want to talk about is the Diamond Creek Fire. So it's a few years older than the Schneider Springs fire. It happened in 2017. And the Diamond Creek Fire burned across the Pasayten Wilderness and eventually spilled over into Canada. And for the last 2 years, the LTF crews have been working along the Hidden Lakes Trail within that burn scar. So these pictures here are just a little illustration of what the Hidden Lakes Trail has looked like when we've showed up there. And if you're saying what trail, so did we. Um, it's a couple years further out from the fire, but that doesn't mean that the work is even close to being done. Even though the initial work of refinding the trail has already happened in the first couple years, these trails have a really bad habit of losing themselves again. And as you can tell, the biggest obstacle for reopening trails like this is just all of the burnt trees that fall down. Like most aren't taken in the initial fire. They're just left dead and standing and weakened, and over years and years of winters and winds, they slowly fall down. And the peak deadfall is actually about 6 or 7 years after a fire. So for that 2017 Diamond Creek fire, we're just now getting into the peak of it. So there will still be, every year we'll go back and clear the trail, and then more trees will fall down and it will need to be cleared all over again, probably for maybe another 7 years or so. And that's just a great example of how long of a process this fire recovery effort is. So over the past 2 years, our crew has cut over 2,000 logs just from the Hidden Lakes Trail, this one trail in the Diamond Creek burn scar. And we haven't even made it to the lakes. But we have made a lot of progress. And after the first year, we cleared so many trees, we were able to come back, clear the new trees that had fallen, and then get to work on the next step after the log out portion, which is restoring the tread surface, redigging the trail, cutting a nice stable bench into these like eroded hillsides of dust and digging it back down. So there's still a lot of work to do here, but after years of work and healing, you can start to see the life coming back into this place. So unlike those black landscapes that we saw in the William O. Douglas Wilderness, you're starting to see wildflowers popping up as the forest regrows itself. I think the next slide has some of these nice wildflowers that we've seen. There they are. There's life coming back, and there's a feeling of hope again in along the Hidden Lakes Trail. And so the final fire I want to talk about tonight is the Wolverine Fire. This happened in 2015 in the Glacier Peak Wilderness. So it's another few years back in time, and another few years I've gotten to watch the trail system and the forest recover. So the Wolverine Fire did a ton of damage in the Entiat River Valley, and that's sort of been the stomping grounds for the Lost Trails Found crews since we started in 2021. And when we first showed up there, the Entiat looked a bit like Hidden Lakes does now, just choked with deadfall, logs down everywhere. There were some sort of like primary succession plants like fireweed and ceanothus that were growing back, but overall it was a pretty dead landscape with dust and charcoal snags everywhere. So that first year of work, we were able to clear the main trail through the river valley all the way up to the glacier head wall at the back. And it was the first time that trail had been able to be cleared since the fire. And then every year since, we've gone back and we've cleared more of the side trails going up and focused more on getting the trails into sustainable shape, as you saw with that tread work that we were doing previously, instead of just finding the trail again in a maze of fallen trees. So it's been a really incredible joy to get to watch and be a part of the restoration of the Entiat over the past 3 summers, and going back into our 4th, still doing work there. Coming back actually just this year, 2 weeks ago, we were the Lost Trails Found crews were working alongside a volunteer crew while we were doing some maintenance before we split off and cleared a new section of trail. But it's just a really cool look at how these different tools can sort of overlap. We were able to do the initial work that's really arduous and dangerous of finding the trail amidst these hazardous overhead trees and thick piles of logs. And then as we're getting it into more sustainable shape, we're able to pass the torch, so to speak, and the volunteer community is upholding and maintaining and doing more of that annual maintenance. So it's just really cool to see and to get to share stories with these folks that are coming out to volunteer. And then all the while, the forest is doing its thing, and it's regrowing itself. You can see in some of these pictures, there's wildlife back in the area. And I know that picture on the right, you still see, oh, look at all these dead, burnt trees that have to fall. But also there's like hip high pine saplings that are all over the place in the Entiat now, and they weren't there at all a couple years back. And just as noticeable as that, there's a massive increase in people getting out. Last year, for the first time while we were out there, we saw climbers on the peaks, fishers going out to the river, backpackers camping at the lakes. So it's a pretty incredible joy to see. So that's my story of the three fires, and hopefully it can just give you a little snapshot into the work that goes into recovering after a wildfire and just how long and gradual of a process it is. It takes years of effort, crews going back again and again to keep finding and refinding the trails and keep them open as time passes and we allow the forest to come back to life. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for all of your support in helping to make this work possible. Um, we really appreciate it while we're out there in the field. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions and I'll be back to answer them at the end of the webinar. Yeah, thank you. I'll pass it back to Kendra. Oh yeah, LTF loves you.
It's important you have to voice that out loud. So I wanted to make sure you didn't miss that slide. When we love LTF, it's so great. Thank you, Zach, so much for sharing the stories. They're really cool. And it is astounding to get the log counts at the end of the season and kind of throughout how much y'all are able to cut. So it's really exciting to see. And I'm starting to see some questions come in, which we will get to in about 10 minutes or so. I do want to take just a little bit more time to talk about some of the other work that WTA does to really support hikers during fire season, sort of across the board. So of course, we've got our advocacy and the great trail maintenance experiences that Zach shared. In addition to all the work we do to restore trails on the ground, WTA is also very committed to helping hikers stay safe and have quality experiences when they're out on trail. And so over the past several years, we've added new features to the website to really give hikers the information they need during fire season. And we've really worked to ensure that we are keeping those evolving as the sort of season changes with us as well. You want to switch the slide for me? Great, thanks so much. So we have several pretty great digital tools that help hikers get a clear picture of sort of active fires, the evolving closures across the state, and helping them plan their time so they can have sort of safe and responsible time on trail. With the help of our MAP volunteers, WTA put out a first version of our wildfire layer back in 2014 on our Hike Finder map, but it has been improved several times since then. And we've worked to really ensure that this Hike Finder layer pulls current fire information from InsaWeb that allows you to see the current fires throughout our state, and really then using that with some of the trail alerts on the hiking guide, you can sort of get a sense of closures to help you really plan your hike, and you can toggle this on and off as you're really starting to look at the state and your summer ahead. And then last year, we added a new tool to the mix, and we rolled out our air quality forecast layer. So our AQI layer, also on the Hike Finder map. And if you kind of look at the filters in the top left corner, unless it's mirrored, and then I don't know my right from my left well enough anyway, but you can see the circle. You can sort of toggle those on and off as you're planning. And really, the new air quality layer allows you to show current air conditions of a particular space if there is moderate or hazardous air quality. It really allows you to hone in on the area to decide where you feel comfortable hiking. And you can sort of check the local readings as you're approaching. And wildfire smoke can travel a great distance. And so large scale fires from Canada or our neighboring states, even as far as sort of California and Montana, can really have a detrimental effect on air quality here in Washington. So even if there's not an active fire in the area, it's still a good idea to take a peek really at those high fire seasons to see and really make sure that the area you're planning on visiting has air quality that you're comfortable with and you have the tools that you need, especially if you're sensitive to smoke. So the maps are on the website, they're in the app, and combine those with our uh, trip reports, our website alerts, and it really gives you a backbone of really hiker education and helping people plan and so they can be prepared whenever they go out, but specifically during fire season. Let's switch the slide for me. Thank you. And of course, a key part of hiker education is really fire prevention, just helping folks understand sort of current rules and regulations around fire ban, but also decision making and how to make sure that the trails are safe for everyone. So we've really improved a lot of our messaging around leave no trace and fire safety, ensuring that hikers are good stewards of these places, that we're leaving them better than they found them. You can never have too much Smokey Bear in your life. So really helping folks understand all that goes into being a good steward during fire season and how to kind of care for those backcountry experiences. And then also, we want to switch the slide, please. We're increasingly talking about what you need to know during fire season on how to stay safe when you're planning your hikes, whether that is planning alternative routes or knowing the potential danger before you go out, or what to do if you are out on a hike and you experience smoke or see signs of fire for the first time. These are all new trail smarts that WTA has been sort of helping share with hikers and really develop our skill set as we've been really hiking into a new reality of what fire season means. And there's a ton of great information about hiking in fire zones, both where there's potential fire, as sort of Zach mentioned, the long-term effects of where places have been closed and pieces to be aware of as you're getting out on trails that have been closed in the past. But also really, one of the questions we get most often is like, what are the 3 top tips to really stay safe during fire season? And honestly, for the most part, these are tips that I feel like are good all the time, but planning is key. Check the conditions before you go out, not just of the trail you're thinking about doing, but of the surrounding areas so that you can have a sense of really avoiding being too close to any active fires. Fires are unpredictable and the conditions can change quickly. So really having a broader swath of your research as you're getting out. And again, as we mentioned, sort of the air quality conditions can impact well beyond where you're thinking about going. So keeping an eye on that. And if you know that an area has been impacted in several years, kind of having that tree awareness and those kind of broader scope of kind of being aware of your surroundings. The second one that's particular to fire season is really thinking about alternative exit routes. This is when we were talking to backcountry firefighters over the course of the years, they won't go into an area until they have a sense of what are the alternative routes out where are your sort of safety corridors. And so that's just a really good tip during fire season is really look at a map, have those lined out so that if you have to make a split uh, minute decision, you already know you're not trying to, in a moment of sort of heightened anxiety, having to choose your alternative route. And then really be prepared to turn around. If you spot a fire or smell smoke that you can't identify the source of, it is always better to go back to a trail another time and really keeping yourself safe and making sure that you're staying out of the way of any active fire spaces or starting fire spaces. It's really important. So turning around can be one of the hardest decisions, and it's also kind of one of those best tips that we kind of time and time again go back to is your brain's the most important tool you pack with you, and make sure that you are comfortable making that call early and then report anything that you found because you are sort of out there, particularly if you're in the backcountry, you might be seeing something. And so there's a DNR phone number that you can use to report any fire potential sightings when you go home. So that's a whole lot of information and just sort of scratches the surface of some of the work that WTA is really doing to help both keep hikers safe during fire season, but also really ensure that the trails that are lost to fire come back again so that we can really ensure that all of those really special backcountry experiences aren't lost forever. And again, that is thanks to all of your generous donations. Members really allow us to keep all of this information free and open to the public and do all of the good work that we do. And so with that, I've seen some good questions come in. And we're going to go ahead and take a few minutes here for questions and see where we can get on some of these. Zach, would you be willing to join me back on screen here? Thanks so much. All right, let's go ahead and start here. One of the questions that I think is often front of mind for folks is how can I camp and hike safely in a burn area? And I know, Zach, that this is something you have had to deal with in real life when you've been out with the crew. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. This is for sure one of our biggest concerns when we're going to work in burned areas. Because as we were talking about before, all of those dead, standing, burnt trees are just waiting for a big windstorm to fall down. So when we are going into the backcountry, we spend a lot of time scouting out campsites and making sure that they're safe. So we're looking for either big clear areas, a big meadow where there's no trees at all, or at least a ring of green trees. If you're down by a river or something, you can find a lot of times some green trees that escape the burn and aren't just dead and waiting to fall on you. Make sure you don't set up your tent under a snag. And then the other big thing is just checking the weather and being aware of high wind, because when you're seeing, you know, winds over 15, 20 miles per hour, you don't even really want to be on a day hike in one of these areas because things could be falling out of the sky on you. So those would be my biggest things is make sure you don't camp under dead trees and stay out of the burn scar when it's windy.
Thanks, Zach. That's great. Yeah, it's one of those. Always remember to look up as well. Like we always
Mhm.
are very thoughtful about picking our campsite by looking down and making sure that we're not impacting the ground. Looking up is something we forget sometimes. So it's a great tip. Great. We've got Zach. I'm hoping you could talk a little bit more about sort of how volunteers help support the Lost Trails Found crew. If you can sort of talk a little bit about what that transition looks like between the two.
Yeah, for sure. So it's we don't have a lot of like direct volunteer support when we're out in the field usually, but the biggest thing is sort of like what I talked about with the NTAT, where it's WTA is mostly a volunteer trail work organization, and we do that really, really well, and we do a lot of really good volunteer trail work. And so I think of the pro crew and the professional Lost Trails Found crew and the volunteer trail crews as yeah, like two tools in the toolbox. So I think there are times where we overlap, and it's cool to see the uh to trade stories with them. And a lot of the volunteer trail workers have a ton of really good experience. But yeah, I think the regular maintenance is mostly done by volunteers, and in doing that, it supports the trails that we work on, like going into the future once we're done with the triage, sort of.
Yeah, thanks. Particularly like those trees go on forever, I feel like. So being able to hand that work over to volunteers at a certain point is the only way we're able to focus on new places. So
Totally.
awesome. Thank you. I got a great question here that I should have mentioned when I was chatting. So thank you for the reminder. Someone's checking out the Hike Finder map right now and only sees the snow depth layer. And uh, so that's because it's not quite fire season yet. And we haven't turned it on because since it pulls regularly from InstaWeb, there's nothing to pull right now. So thank you for the reminder. It usually goes on end of this month. So it's so keep an eye out, and I'd say not seeing it means that we haven't really had the need to pull for the information yet. So uh we're okay holding off a little bit longer on providing that tool. Uh, but thank you for the reminder. It hasn't switched over yet. But you might still need the snow layer. It is still snowy up in the mountains. I think it's like at 6,000 feet these days is where snow is hitting, I believe. So even though it's starting to feel a little more summery down here as you're getting out, the snow layer can really help you see what the mountains look like as you're planning your hikes before the top of season. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Uh, Zach, we've got a question here about the sort of background and experience of the members of the LTF crew. Can you share a little bit about who's out doing this great work for us?
Yeah. So we've got three crews now. So it's 18 people. Each crew has 6 people on it. So there's a lot of different folks out there coming from a lot of different backgrounds. Um, a lot of these people come to us as experienced trail workers who have done work with other organizations like the PCTA or the Appalachian Trail Club, or a lot of folks get their start doing trail work for like conservation, AmeriCorps type crews. We see people with not exactly trail experience, but tangential sort of either doing like invasive species like invasive plant removal, conservation work. We have like some ex-wildland firefighters. So a wide variety of experience. We even have a few folks every year who come in with not very much trail experience at all, which is awesome to give us that diversity. Um, we have, oh man, this could be a whole other webinar in itself, but WTA has a program called the Emerging Leaders Program, which is a professional crew targeted towards bringing BIPOC people who historically have been underrepresented in the outdoor work community, and sort of giving them like an intro course and a lot of the tools to be a successful professional trail worker. And the ELP and the LTF have had a very symbiotic relationship over the years, where that program gives people a lot of trail skills, and then they find a place on our professional Lost Trails Found crew. So that's been a big avenue as well. And if you are curious to know a little bit more and want to see some of the faces and personalities that are on our crew, there is a blog post that highlights a couple lovely humans from our trail crew that I think we're going to post the link somewhere on here.
It should
Not
be
very.
answered in the Q&A. It's also live on the homepage right now, I believe, and it's a great sort of peek at who's out right now. I will add, one of the very cool things is that so Zach mentioned that this is year 4 of doing sort of Lost Trails Found cruise, and we are actually have been able to expand the program this year. In past years, we've had 2 crews, and this year we've gotten it up to 3. So there's going to be more logs cleared and hopefully more good work done throughout the summer. So you can get a peek of some of the good folks doing that work. And if you go to our Lost Trails Found campaign website, which is just wta.org/Lost Trails, you can go ahead and really learn more about all the work that WTA is doing to ensure that as trails fall off the map, WTA is really helping them find their way back on. And the professional crews we're talking about tonight are just kind of one of the cool things that are happening through that. But that's the sort of namesake campaign of where our professional crews are really helping this key work with our backcountry trails. All right, let's see here. I'm going to dig in for a couple more questions here. Let's see here. Got a sort of question around how folks can help while they're out hiking. And I think that the best answer here is really practice good trail etiquette, really respect fire bans. Think about if a campfire is necessary at all. There's such a great ambiance, but more and more it can really be an added complication. And if you happen to see things on trail, if you come across a campfire that hasn't been put all the way out, by all means, please smolder that completely, report anything that you see there. But really, the best thing that hikers can do is strive to practice kind of great fire etiquette and be good stewards of the places as we're going out. That means respecting closures if trails are closed, even when those closures can feel like they are after a fire has been put out. As Zach mentioned, those trail conditions are often not safe for a year or longer after the fact, as the soil is resettling, as trees are coming down. So it's really kind of making sure that you're staying good stewards and not getting in any of our firefighters' way. The sort of biggest things you can do as a hiker during fire season. All right, let's see. Sounds like we're having a little bit of trouble dropping links in the Q&A, but we will definitely make sure that we get them added to the follow-up email at the end. And so you'll be able to get all of the links there. You can also find lots of great resources about sort of how to be a good steward of these trails and sort of additional tips on how to hike in fire impacted lands in the Trail Smarts section of our website. So wta.org/trail smarts. We'll give you lots of good information as well. All right, I think we've got time for 1 or 2 more questions. If there's anything else that folks would like to put in the Q&A, we'll see what we can get to. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the list real quick. Zach, do you want to talk a little bit about sort of some of the planning and prep work that we do to sort of keep crews safe while they're out there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I saw a question about if each crew has a satellite phone. We do. Each crew carries a Garmin inReach, and WTA has a manager on call, so we have somebody at all times with the emergency bat phone next to them on their pillow while they sleep. So and that's not just for the Lost Trails Found crew, but for all of our trail crews and volunteer crews that we have out there. If anything happens, there's a direct line to somebody who has the means to make things happen. We also carry radios that can contact emergency dispatch, so we can get in contact with the forest directly and get emergency services. But yeah, that's a good question. And satellite phone or those Garmin inReaches are really good. I would recommend it for anyone going to hike in the backcountry. It's even if you're not doing trail work, you never know what could happen back there. So it's good to have a plan, sort of like Kendra was talking about with a plan of egress in case you go into a spot. That's another tool that you can have for yourself as a means to contact the outside world.
Thanks, Zach. All right. I think that that is most of the questions that we have sort of seen. So I'm going to ask that we flip to the next slide real quick here, and I'm going to talk for a few more minutes in case this is your kind of last hurrah. If you thought of something, we do still have a few minutes, but it sounds like we're starting to wrap up here. I just want to say a huge thank you, first of all, Zach, for taking the time to really share with us, because it's such a cool story, and I always love hearing about what the crews are up to. I also wanted to just say thank you to all of you for joining, and really your support. Members make our work possible. If you're interested in sort of other ways to get involved with WTA, there's a couple of suggestions here. Trip reports are really key. I'm sure that folks read them. It's just as important to write them. So if you are able to share your next adventure with your fellow hikers, it doesn't have to be long. It's pretty easy now that you can do it directly from the Trailblazer app. It'll pull your photos straight through for you. A couple of sentences about what you saw, anything you'd wish you'd known before you got out there, can go a long way, not just to helping hikers plan, as we talked a lot about how planning is important, but also WTA and land managers also use information from trip reports as we're sort of planning our upcoming trail seasons. So sharing information there is great. As Zach mentioned, WTA is volunteer driven with our work parties. So if you're looking for an excuse to check out a new trail, WTA.org/volunteer, join us out on trail and get a sense of what goes into really keeping these places open. There's no experience necessary. We provide all the tools and the training, and it can be a really great day. And then finally, really, WTA's advocacy program is key to ensuring that our agencies have the funding they need and that hikers have a voice in the policies that manage the places that we explore. If you want to make sure that you know what's going on and are able to be a part of shaping the future of trails, I encourage you to join our Trail Action Network and be a part of raising your voice there. With that, I will be sending out a follow-up email, hopefully later this week, that'll have the recording and lots of great links and resources to get you set for your summer season. And I think that I'm going to check my FAQ one more time and make sure there's nothing that's been missed here. All right. I'm going to close us out with one bonus question, Zach. You up for one more quick one here? All right. We got a
Yeah, let's
question
do it.
around if trails are restored to their original routes or if they're rerouted.
That's a great question. We always try and our first recourse is to go back to the original route. Where that is not possible, we will do like a realignment. But usually to do a full reroute, it has to go through a whole environmental review process that takes years. So in general, we try and stick to the original route that was laid out.
Excellent, thank you. And I think the InsaWeb is one of the key places, in addition to WTA, where you can sort of see what's happening this summer with fires. But the Hike Finder map is a great place to sort of start. And if you look at the sort of some of the blog links we'll send out, will give sort of additional information about how to sort of keep an eye on what's happening throughout the season. With that, I'm going to thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope you have a wonderful hiking season. Stay safe and be kind to each other out there. Have a great night, and thanks again for joining us.
Thank you all.